Good morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Friday, August 14th. I'm Gary Stevens. Glad you are with us today. We'll have some open line time following the 11 o'clock, well, actually following the 10 o'clock news, but probably not after the 11 o'clock news. We are expected to carry the remarks from Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the latest update, the state's response to COVID-19. What will she say? You'll hear it on WHTC. So we'll have open line following the 10 o'clock news block. Patty Vandenberg will join us in about an hour with what's new around Holland. And in our 10:30 segment, we'll be talking about what's going on in Allegan County with board chairman and aggrieved elector Jim Story. But on this second Friday of the month, we devote our first segment to Ask the Attorney. We give you an opportunity to ask questions of an attorney with the meter not running. And this time we are joined by Ken Puzycki of the law office of Kenneth A. Puzycki. He's in his offices in Holland this morning by a Zoom connection. Good morning, Ken. Glad you are with us.
Glad to be here, Gary. How are you?
We are well. We are well. And if you have a question for Ken, call us at 395-1450, 395-1450. Have your offices been reopened to face-to-face contact, or are you still doing everything virtually?
We are doing most work virtually, but we are doing signings. We have what we call the COVID room. We've got some Herman Miller partitions with plexiglass rather than the foam core. And it's kind of like being in a prison where you kind of talk to each other on the other side of bulletproof glass. But we do have in-person signing, but we have to separate ourselves with the plexiglass. So yes.
Yeah, it does. Whether or not you have little phones, whether or not you have little phones on. No, I don't think you have phones on the other side. Like they do over in the Hooskow. But anyway,
it makes for good conversation when we're sitting there. We kind of, it always makes for good conversation talking about what it's like to be in prison and such. But it's all good. It's all good, and it's safe. And we wash things down before and after. And the good news, Gary, is they get to take my pen without thinking they're stealing it, because we give it to them. We don't want the pen back after they've used it. In the past, we've kind of joked about people liking our pens and they walk away with them. Now we actually tell them to take it so they don't have to feel guilty about taking our pens.
Make sure that they take something that has not only the law firm of Kenneth A. Puzycki, but also that important phone number as well. 270 James Street in Holland is where the offices are. And, of course, Puzycki, PUZYCKI.com is the website. I don't know whether or not you put all that information on the pen side or not.
I don't. I'm too Dutch. I can't. I don't do that. People tell me I should. With as many pens as leave this office, I probably should, but not yet. Not yet.
But by the way, a little thing we had a couple of years ago, we had a little running thing, a gag with our friends from Zealand in our studios here, where our friends from the Cooley Godfrey law firm put up a couple of mugs and some pens in there. And then Jan Musin, the master gardener from DeBrine Seed, saw that and said, "Hey, wait a minute," and put some pens in there. And then I mentioned to Mark Vandenbosch from Zealand Lumber, "Hey, what about you?" And he probably brought in some pens in a little container. So we still have the pen wars here in our studios.
So Gary, I promise, when I put my name on my pens, you will get a few.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. We will pass the word along. If you got a question for Ken Puzycki, not about pens, but about probate or other related questions, not so much criminal law. He does not dabble with the bad guys in that regard. But if you have another question about that, you can ask him at 395-1450, 395-1450. Let me put the caveat for this particular phrase of questioning to you. First off, you are not an investment advisor. You do not handle any investment advice, but you can help set up some of the groundwork for some investment stuff, or in the path I want to talk a little bit about, trying to set up legacy giving. and an estate situation.
Absolutely.
You can help in that regard. It's something that I've been trying to bring up from time to time with you and with Nathan Box as well, when we have the Ask the Attorney segment about legacy giving and the importance of it for many nonprofits involved, but also it's a way to sort of get your wishes taken care of so you don't have to worry about all this probate stuff when you go, when you pass into the next life.
Right. So we need to unpack a lot there, Gary. More than you care to know. So you started off with the caveat that I am not a financial advisor. I don't give financial advice, but I did get into a rather heated discussion with a local investment advisor several years ago when it came to filling out the beneficiary form on their investment accounts, because I think that is a legal issue. Okay, when you die, where does your IRA go? And I was telling the client that I suggest that they name their trust as the beneficiary, and the investment advisor thought that the kid should be the beneficiary. And he basically told me where to go, telling me to do my job. And that was, I take care of the documents, the wills and trusts, and he would take care of the beneficiary designation. And we had a rather heated discussion, and we agreed to disagree, because I think that the beneficiary form is more of a legal document than and the financial advisor should take care of the investments themselves. But be that as it may, that's number one. Number two, you hit legacy giving. And I don't know if you were kind of skirting the issue of charitable gift funds. Is that where you were going with that? Well, comment?
Not so much. I really wasn't going charitable gift funds, but a lot of nonprofits, religious organizations saying, "Think of us in your legacy giving," along those lines. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because when clients come in and we talk about estate planning and who gets what, inevitably somebody asks the question, "Do my kids have to pay tax on this?" Right? And if they have an IRA, the answer is yeah, your kids have to pay not estate tax and not capital gains tax, but they do have to pay income tax on IRAs. So if the client is charitably inclined, I say, look, if you're going to give 10% of your estate to charity, don't give them tax-free assets, give them taxable assets. So let's name the charity as the beneficiary on the IRAs, and let's name the kids or the trust as the beneficiary on all the tax-free, what I call the gravy or the frosting. So charities love to get IRA assets. Do you know why?
Why?
They don't pay tax.
Well, that would be a good reason.
That would be, yeah. So I ask clients, if you were a child and you were set to receive $100,000, let's say, from a deceased parent, would you rather get $100,000 in cash or $100,000 in an IRA? So I ask you, Gary Stevens, Aunt Millie passed away and you're getting $100,000. Which would you rather have, cash or an IRA?
Well, I hate to say it, but I have a funny feeling it would seem like cash would be the best way of doing it, because the IRA is you're gonna get zapped on that as well.
Bingo, absolutely correct. And you'd be amazed at how many people want the IRA so that they can take the money over time, but they ignore exactly what you pointed out, and that is you got to pay the tax on that. I would much rather have $100,000 in cash because I don't have to pay tax on it. And but some people want that IRA. Now, if it's a Roth IRA, different story, because the Roth IRA, of course, is tax-free, and that if it's in the Roth IRA, it grows tax-free forever. So the growth in that Roth IRA is tax-free to whomever receives it. So if somebody asks you that same question and says, would you rather have cash, a regular IRA, or a Roth IRA? Which of the three would you choose, Gary?
The Roth IRA, obviously, because
Take
you
the
can be
Roth.
able to keep it going.
That's right. So in the context of what I do and what Nathan does and what other estate planning attorneys do, we help people decide which asset goes to which beneficiary. And it used to be really good because clients with grandchildren could name those grandchildren as the beneficiaries of their Roth IRAs. And if you got a 21-year-old grandkid who receives a $50,000 Roth IRA, they used to be able to stretch that Roth IRA over 50 or 60 years of tax-free growth. You can't do that anymore, by the way. Under the Secure Act, quote unquote, all IRAs, Roth IRAs and regular IRAs, have to be liquidated within 10 years of the date of the account holder's death. But in the past, we used to say, give the Roth to the grandkids. Let them stretch that sucker out 50, 60, 70 years on a tax-free basis. When it comes to charitable giving, let's give them the taxable stuff and let's leave the gravy, the leftovers, if you will, for the kids. And that's part of fun. Even though I'm not an investment advisor and I don't give tax advice, I can give that kind of generic suggestion as to who gets what at the end of the day.
And that's part of what Ken Puzycki does. He is with the law firm of Kenneth A. Puzycki. If you have a question for Ken, he'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450, 395-1450. I'm going to ask you maybe a question that might take the next 5 minutes. I don't know.
Not another constitutional law question. Okay?
No constitutional law.
Okay, good.
We are talking probate.
Oh, all right. I know a bit about that.
What is the worst scenario you have ever encountered dealing with probate?
So many to choose from.
Think about it. I'll tell you why I'm going to say think about it.
Okay.
We got a call. Good morning. You're on Talk of the Town with Ken Puzycki.
Hey, Ken, I talked to you last month or so whenever you were on. I missed your show, so I called you at your office. I was asking about somebody stealing your deed to your home and stuff. Did you remember that conversation I had with you?
Yeah, sure.
Like identity theft. Did you think any more about that? Is that something somebody should worry about, or is that some like really rare thing? Because you hear these commercials for, protecting your deeds and stuff.
Yeah, in my humble opinion, again, the issue was when deeds, people actually can access deeds online. And if you can access deeds online, hackers can go in there and change the ownership of those documents. I don't see that as a huge problem. Is it technically possible? Yes, but there's a paper trail. I don't see it's not like a financial account where the money disappears and goes off into some island, accounting in the Cayman Islands. You own the home. And I find it very hard to imagine the situation where somebody can dispossess you of your home simply because a document is filed fraudulently at the Register of Deeds. I found it very interesting that there's a warning out there, and people are coming up with all kinds of ways to screw people over. But I have never seen it happen. It's not to say it won't happen, but I've never seen it happen. But apparently somebody has connived a way to get their name on people's deeds. And it's something to look out for. If you see somebody else's name on the tax bill, obviously you need to react to it. And if you're really concerned about it, you can always get online, whether it's Ottawa County or Allegan County, and verify that your name is still on the deed. And that's free. That's not a subscription service. You get onto the Allegan County website and you can say Allegan County Property Search, and you can verify that the property is still in your name. But it's a fun issue to think about. But I think it's overplayed by the companies that want to quote unquote protect you against those types of scams.
Because I have a trust, so I just figured if they're going to try to scam me, it's a little bit harder with a trust with the paper trail like you're talking about and all that, than just a standard person having a deed. You know, it's like the next door neighbor. You can break in his house easier because he leaves the door unlocked. And here, I got a deadbolt, so go next door and rob him.
There you go. Another advantage to a trust. Thanks for the call.
Appreciate the call. 395-1450, 395-1450. All right, back to the original thing. The worst case scenario for probate.
The worst case scenario for probate I had was a gentleman who had a handwritten will with no date on it that left everything to his 4 sons, one of whom was, let's say, spending time in Ionia, like 10 to 15 in Ionia. He was in prison. And the issue became the kids all wanted me to, quote unquote, protect that child's share. Because, Gary, what do you think happens if you're in the Huskow and somebody dies and leaves you $20,000?
The state takes the $20,000 to help pay the costs.
Darn straight. They can take 90% of that money. And if there's no provision in the will or the trust, there's really nothing you can do. But the kids were, it got kind of ugly because the kids wanted to protect the assets for their brother. I would have no part of it. But the son who was in prison wanted to do whatever he could to protect those assets. And it just got very ugly very quickly. And the real travesty was there wasn't enough money to really get involved about. But generically speaking, handwritten wills are fraught with problems, especially when they don't have a date on there, especially when they're either not witnessed or not in the person's own handwriting. The ones that I don't like getting involved in are where kids are going after each other when they're dividing up assets, whether it's jewelry, whether it's real estate, whether it's the cottage up north, who gets the cottage? And if so, who gets it and at what price? Because the kid that wants the cottage thinks it's worth $100,000. The kids in California who don't want the cottage, they think it's worth $300,000. And if you have assets that are sensitive, whether it's the family farm, always an issue, the family business, the family cottage, or other sentimental assets, it's incumbent upon the attorney to put something in the will or in the trust that specifically addresses that. When mom and dad say, oh, we'll let the kids figure that out, I have to put up the stop sign and say, no, don't do that to your kids. You figure it out. Who do you want to get the cottage, and how do you want to determine the value? Because otherwise the kids go after each other. And part of my job, at least as I see it, is not only to distribute things after somebody dies, although that's part of it. Part of my job is to keep the peace within the family. And when people do, crazy, not crazy things, but simple things, thinking they're, avoiding the lawyer, right? They end up creating way more problems than they imagine. So the answer to your question, Gary, I'm going to change it, is this. I had a client, mom had 5 kids. She had a 150-acre farm. And rather than get a will, rather than get a trust, she put the oldest son's name on the deed to the 150-acre farm. Hoping, praying, believing that son would sell the farm and divide the proceeds between himself and his 5 siblings. This happens all the time. In this particular situation, though, after the funeral was over, the son kept the house and the 150-acre farm and would not share any of it with his brothers and sisters. And he said, I went to the lawyer says it's mine. And legally speaking, he's absolutely right. But that parent, again, rather than making it very clear what that parent wanted, she thought it would be easiest and cheapest just to put the oldest son's name on the farm, and it blew up. And now, in fact, I just talked to one of the other kids. the children are not talking to each other. And really, the real horrible thing, the grandkids don't even talk to each other. This is turning out to be a Hatfield and McCoy situation where none of the siblings are talking to each other. None of the grandkids are talking to each other over the farm. Yeah. And it's really a travesty. So, people try to do things, on the cheap, and they ended up spending, $10,000, $15,000 on my services to try to unravel this thing. And, mom could have got a will for $1,000 and avoided all that, but she didn't. And here we are. So that in particular, I think would be, the worst probate situation I've been involved in. It was sad. It was ugly. The prison one was fun, but the family farm and the kids all going after each other and the grandkids never talking to each other, that really tears at your heartstrings. And I am eligible to run for president of the United States.
You were shaking your head over this particular story that's now getting more traction as we're going along.
Here's why. If the Republicans bring this up as a significant issue, Ted Cruz is dead in the water. Okay, John McCain would not have been able to run for president. The issue of what is a natural-born citizen applies to way more people than people actually realize. So I guess the old adage, live by the sword, die by the sword, comes into play here, because if what they say is true, several very influential people are not going to be able to run for president. So
but that's it's the political animal, I'm afraid.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Here we go as well. Let's just wrap it up by telling you, people, that you can get a hold of Ken on the website at the Law Office of Kenneth A. Puzycki, PLLC, estate planning, elder law, Medicaid, and probate administration. The website is Puzycki, PUZYCKI.com. But Ken, what about maybe people wanting to contact you, as they say, the old-fashioned way, via the telephone?
That's a little easier to remember. 738-8800. 738-8800.
And, of course, you'll be happy to help them navigate the legal waters. And just like, don't be your own doctor. Don't be your own attorney. Even whatever the legacy of Robert Shapiro might say, no.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, because it could cause more, again, I'm not trying to speak up for the attorneys, but let's put it this way. There's a reason why they do what they do so well.
Yeah, well, 7 times out of 10, I think it's safe to say everything goes okay. But it's the other 30% of the time you wish you would have called a lawyer ahead of time, because it ends up costing you way more than it would have the first time around.
Ken Puzycki, attorney at law, thank you very much for joining us on Talk of the Town. Talk to you in a couple of months.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Gary.
That is attorney Kenneth A. Puzycki on WHTC's Talk of the Town program.